Socrates, a name that echoes through the halls of philosophy, wasn't a ruler, a warrior, or a poet. He left behind no books, no written theories, no grand monuments. And yet, his legacy shaped the foundation of Western thought. Why? Because he asked questions, dangerous questions. Questions that forced people to think, to reflect, and to reconsider everything they thought they knew. In ancient Athens, a city proud of its democracy, culture, and power, lived this peculiar man. He walked barefoot through the streets, often unkempt, with no concern for wealth or appearance. He did not lecture from a platform. Instead, he engaged people in conversations, at the marketplace, in public squares, wherever he could find someone willing, or unwilling, to listen. He asked what seemed like simple questions. What is justice? What is virtue? What is love? But these questions were never simple. They were traps, not to humiliate, but to expose how little even the most respected citizens truly knew. He did not claim to possess wisdom. On the contrary, he declared that he knew nothing. But it was precisely this recognition of his own ignorance that made him wiser than those who pretended to know everything. Socrates believed that true wisdom began with acknowledging one's ignorance, and that terrified the powerful. You see, societies are built on ideas, on beliefs that are often taken for granted. When someone starts to question those beliefs, the foundation trembles. When someone teaches others to think critically, to challenge traditions, and to seek truth rather than blindly follow customs, that person becomes a threat. And that's what Socrates became, a threat. Not because he raised an army, not because he conspired against the state, but because he encouraged the youth of Athens to ask questions, because he taught them to value truth over conformity, reason over rhetoric, and integrity over popularity. He didn't indoctrinate them with ideologies, he liberated their minds. But liberation comes at a cost. As Socrates' influence grew, so did the unease among Athens' political and intellectual elite. He had many admirers, especially among the youth, but he also made powerful enemies. He exposed the ignorance of those who claimed to know everything. He showed how flawed their reasoning was, how shallow their values were, and how insecure their power truly was. Eventually, the city had enough. They put him on trial. The charges? Corrupting the youth and failing to recognize the gods of the state. But these were just masks for a deeper fear. The real crime, unspoken but understood, was this. Socrates taught people to think for themselves. At his trial, Socrates could have saved himself. He could have pleaded for mercy. He could have played the part of the remorseful citizen. But he did none of that. He stood firm, unwavering in his conviction. He told the court that if they silenced him, they would be harming themselves more than him. Because he was like a gadfly, sent by the gods to sting the lazy horse that was Athens, to awaken it, to keep it alive. He was found guilty. The sentence was death. They gave him the choice, exile or poison. Socrates chose poison, not because he wanted to die, but because he believed that a life lived without questioning, without seeking truth, was no life at all. And so, in a small room surrounded by his students, Socrates drank the cup of hemlock. His friends wept. Some begged him to escape, but he remained calm, composed, even comforting them in his final moments. He spoke of the soul, of the afterlife, and of the possibility that death was not an end but a new beginning. Then slowly his body succumbed to the poison. His death was not the end of his voice, it was the beginning. His student Plato would carry his teachings forward, writing dialogues that captured the spirit of Socratic questioning. Aristotle would follow, building upon that foundation. Generations of thinkers, from the Stoics to modern philosophers, would draw from his legacy. But Socrates did more than influence philosophy. He taught humanity something profound, that the most dangerous person in society is not the one who wields a sword, but the one who wields a question. And that freedom is not given. It is discovered, one question at a time. Centuries have passed, and still, societies fear the questioners. Still, those who speak uncomfortable truths are silenced, ridiculed, or worse. And yet, the spirit of Socrates lives on in every mind that dares to doubt, in every soul that refuses to accept ignorance as truth. His life remains a testimony to the power of reason, the courage of conscience, and the cost of truth. He reminds us that ideas, no matter how inconvenient, cannot be poisoned or buried. They live on, whispering to the thoughtful, provoking the comfortable, and awakening those who sleep. Socrates was not a rebel in the traditional sense. He carried no weapons. He started no war. Yet he stood up to the greatest empire of thoughtless conformity, using only logic and words. In that quiet defiance, he became one of the most powerful revolutionaries of all time. He questioned everything: tradition, politics, morality, religion, not to destroy but to illuminate. He believed that through dialogue, humanity could arrive at truth. But he also knew that truth is rarely welcomed. Truth threatens comfort, it shatters illusions, and those in power often thrive on illusions. The irony is that Athens, the birthplace of democracy, killed the man who embodied its deepest principles. The man who practiced open dialogue, who respected individual conscience, and who trusted in rational debate was condemned by the very system that claimed to value those things. Yet his death exposed that contradiction. It revealed how even the most enlightened societies can become tyrannical when afraid. And it showed that true courage is not just standing against enemies, but standing for truth even when your friends, your city, and your country turn against you. Socrates didn't offer answers. He offered methods. He didn't preach ideologies. He practiced inquiry. He didn't claim to know. It was his not knowing that drove him. He taught us not what to think, but how to think. And that is why he remains immortal. Today, when we look around and see dogmas paraded as truths, when we see youth discouraged from asking questions, when we see education reduced to memorization rather than discovery, we need Socrates more than ever. Because Socrates was not just a man, he was a mirror that forced each person to confront their beliefs, their values, their soul. He asked not just what you believed, but why you believed it. And if your answer was shallow, he would not let you hide behind excuses. He would push, prod, and question until you either broke or awakened. In the end, Socrates' death was not a defeat. It was a victory. A man without wealth, power, or status challenged the might of a city-state and won, not in life, but in legacy. His voice outlived the voices of those who condemned him. His questions still echo, and his methods still freeze. He drank poison, but his words became antidotes. For ignorance, for arrogance, for fear. His silence became a roar, reminding us that one honest question can shake empires. And that the highest form of human life is not blind obedience, but conscious exploration. So when you see injustice, ask why. When you hear something you've always believed, ask where it came from. When you're told not to question, question harder. Because that is what Socrates would have done, and that is what it means to be truly alive.